Let's talk about this race for governor. It's what we've all been talking about for several months right now. The latest poll numbers that you came out with just this week. If the election for governor were being held today, would you be more likely to vote for Vincent Shaheen or Nikki Haley? Haley with 46% of the response, Shaheen 37%, undecided 13.4%. Shaheen getting about 80% of the Democrats, Haley about 80% of the Republicans. They split the independents roughly down the middle. Anything about these numbers that jump out at you?
Well, if you'd have said 6 months ago, how is, generic Republican going to do against generic Democrat? Most folks would say, well, the Republican's going to have a double-digit lead. Maybe not quite, but maybe pushing 20%, little under that probably. The reason is South Carolina is a pretty red state these days. It's a Republican-dominant state, and this is also because nationally an anti-democratic sentiment seeping in. So there was just a significant edge for whoever the Republican candidate was. Nikki Haley has that edge. She has a 9-point lead, but a lot of folks thought it would be larger. It is in the single digits. It's the highest single digits you can have, but it's a single-digit lead, which means that Vincent Shaheen, while he has a lot of ground to make up in just 3 weeks, it is entirely possible because there's been so much anger on the conservative side. Nikki Haley's support is possibly maxing out. All the people who are fired up enough and want to vote for
are there.
They've been fired up for a while. Whereas Vincent Shaheen, there's definitely an enthusiasm gap with the Democrats. And while he needs to make that up, that means that he also has somewhere he can go.
The 13.5% undecided, is that a pretty...
Three weeks out, it's not normal. Really that uncommon. Our survey is of likely voters, and of course, to do it right, you have to use random digit dial and registered voters and wireless, and we use live interviewers. That's the only way you can legally use wireless sample.
Right.
And so that means that someone, if they're taking a robo poll and they know they're going to vote but they're undecided, they might not take the poll. Whereas with our survey, they would. So we're going to show those undecideds. And 13% means there are folks out there to be gotten, but that's not that uncommon.
The second question, which I found to be interesting, and the one that I think a lot of political operatives have latched on to, is would you say there's a possibility you might change your mind before Election Day? Might change their mind? 26% of Haley supporters said they might. Only 18% of Shaheen supporters said the same thing. Definite about their choice? This is a little bit different as well. 80% of Shaheen's voters say they're very definite. Only 71% of Haley's voters. What does this say to you in your mind?
Well, let's make sure we run the data the other way too. Say 7 out of 10 are absolutely certain for Haley, 8 out of 10 are absolutely certain for Shaheen. It's not that uncommon for a certain number of voters to say, I plan on voting for this person, I'm pretty sure about it. The real issue is the gap between Nikki Haley and Vincent Shaheen. It's about 8 points, an 8-point certainty gap, if you will. What I think's going on there, and I can't really dig that deep into the rest of the data to prove this, but here's my suspicion, that people are going with their gut, with their partisan gut. I'm going to vote for the candidate of my party. And that's sort of a macro partisanship push. But then there is something individual about the candidate where they're looking and saying, while my partisanship pushes me this way, something individual about either my candidate or the other candidate is making me less than certain. So look at those Republicans. Either you have people saying, I'm a Republican, I want to vote for the Republican candidate, but boy, there's something about that Vince Shaheen I like, or hey, I'm a Republican, I want to vote for the Republican candidate, but there's something about Nikki Haley that makes me a little uncomfortable. In the final wash, the majority of the people who said, I'm going to vote for candidate X, will end up voting for candidate X. But that enthusiasm, that certainty gap is something to watch.